Welcome to CARICOMP Insider, where high-tech facial recognition meets real-world intelligence.
Only 34 out of 156 passengers made their flight. The rest were stuck in a biometric screening queue at Milan's airport that stretched past 2 hours. One plane left for Manchester more than two-thirds empty, not because of weather, not because of a strike, but because Europe's new digital border couldn't process people fast enough to board. If you've ever crossed an international border, handed over your passport, looked into a camera, pressed your fingers to a scanner, this story is about you. And if you haven't, it's still about you, because what's happening in Europe right now is a preview of where biometric borders are heading everywhere. Last October, the European Union switched on something called the Entry-Exit System, or EES. It replaced the old manual passport stamp for most non-EU nationals with an electronic record of every crossing, fingerprints, facial scans, timestamps. 29 countries are rolling it out, with full implementation expected by April of next year. In its first 6 months, the system logged 66 million border crossings. That's an enormous number. But the question running through this entire episode isn't whether the technology works. It's whether the airports, the staff, and the governments behind it can keep up. Start with what the system actually caught. According to EU Commission data, EES refused entry to about 32,000 people in those first 6 months. Among them, roughly 800 were flagged as threats to internal security. Nearly 7,000 were turned away for overstaying previous Schengen visas. The system identified criminals, imposters, and people traveling on forged documents, and it stopped them at the border. That's not a pilot project anymore. That's a functioning security layer operating across an entire continent. And the scale of what's happening behind the scenes is staggering. Daily fingerprint checks against EU databases jumped from around 17,000 to roughly 87,000. That's a 5-fold increase in biometric queries happening every single day. Most enterprise systems never reach that kind of volume growth in a comparable time frame. For anyone building or evaluating biometric comparison tools, that number tells you something important. Governments aren't debating whether to deploy this technology at scale anymore. They already did. And for the rest of us, it means your fingerprints and your face are being checked against massive databases in real time every time you cross a Schengen border. So the matching works. The algorithm does its job. Then why did 122 people miss a flight they were booked on? Because the bottleneck was never the technology. It was everything around it. During the Easter holidays, peak travel season, wait times at airports ballooned to between 2 and 3 hours. Border agents were overwhelmed. Staffing was inconsistent. Workflows varied from one checkpoint to the next. The European Commission says the vast majority of Schengen states implemented EES effectively. But that word, effectively, does a lot of heavy lifting when passengers are missing flights. And none of this was a surprise. A report published by the European Parliament back in 2013 predicted exactly these problems: the queues, the boarding delays, the operational friction. The EES was first envisioned in 2008. It took 17 years and 5 separate delays before it actually went live. The issues that made headlines this spring were documented more than a decade ago. Governments moved forward anyway. That's a deliberate trade-off, accepting known operational pain in exchange for a security system they believed they needed. The Commission's own roadmap for what comes next confirms where the real gap sits. Countries need to cut processing times. They need more automated border control lanes. They need better registration procedures and higher quality biometric captures at the point of enrollment. Notice what's not on that list. Nobody's saying the matching algorithm needs to be more accurate. The constraint is interoperability between 29 different countries, training for border staff, data quality standards, and maintaining consistent procedures when a terminal is packed at 6 in the morning during a holiday weekend. That gap matters for anyone in this space. The next generation of tools won't compete on matching accuracy alone. They'll compete on whether they can be deployed smoothly under real-world pressure. And for travelers, it means the experience at the border depends less on the scanner in front of you and more on which country you happen to be crossing through. The technology passed the test. The institutions around it didn't yet. When the limiting factor in a biometric system isn't whether the algorithm can match your face, but whether the airport has enough staff to get you to your gate, we've crossed a threshold. Biometrics aren't experimental anymore. They're infrastructure. And infrastructure problems look completely different from research problems. So 66 million crossings in 6 months. The biometric matching works. It caught thousands of overstays and hundreds of security threats. But the systems around the system, the staffing, the workflows, the coordination across 29 countries, those are still catching up. Whether you're evaluating comparison tools for your agency or you're just planning a trip through Europe this summer, the same reality applies. The scanner will know who you are. The question is whether anyone's built the line fast enough to get you to your plane. The full story's in the description if you want the deep dive.
Now you know something most people in this industry don't. Use it. And when you're ready to put it to work, caracomp.com. We'll see you tomorrow.